Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Rise from the Shadows. Very honored today to have Mike Roderick as our guest. He's going to talk about weaponizing adversity. Mike is a senior non-commissioned officer in the United States Air Force and a Commandant of the Whiteman Airman Leadership School. On this episode, he opens up about his troubled childhood. He discusses the abuse, abandonment, and neglect that he and his brothers had to deal with while staying with his mother. Also discusses how he was able to overcome the psychological toll these events took on him at such a young age, and how he fought through them to discover his purpose and help hundreds of airmen on an annual basis throughout adversity. Also, check out his book recommendation, The Outward Mindset, which we have a link for in the episode description. And also, check out our website, www.theshadowspodcast.com. While you're over there, leave us a review. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes of the Ignite podcast, the Shadows podcast, or Rise from the Shadows. Folks, enjoy this episode of Rise from the Shadows.
Hey everybody, this is Mike Roderick. I am the ALS Commandant, that is Airman Leadership School from Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri. Happy to be on this episode of Rise from the Shadows podcast. My episode is really going to be talking about my adversities, just giving you my story and how I use that adversity as a strength. So just basically, everybody sees me now as like, hey, you're the commandant, you're the leader of the Airman Leadership School. You're kind of supervising a lot of instructors that are, creating supervisors for your entire Air Force base. You got everything all together. And one of the things that I tell my students is that, right now you may see this image of a successful senior non-commissioned officer in the United States Air Force. And I look like the ideal senior NCO to some people. They give me all kinds of praise, but I also let them know, like, hey, you haven't seen any of the struggles, you haven't seen any of the adversities, and these are some of the things that I've gone through. And it also lets them know, like, hey, this man is human. He does know where we come from, sometimes even worse. So I'm going to be sharing that story here today. I'm going to go ahead and start with my childhood. I wasn't really from the worst of beginnings until, I kind of look back and start seeing like, hey, I really did go through some serious things. My father, he was in the military. He was a really good dude. Back then, he was a vehicle maintenance NCO, non-commissioned officer. He got out when he was a technical sergeant select after about 12 years of service. He was just kind of tired of it. But when I was born, my father, he met my mom in his first base in Michigan. They had me and then got married shortly after that. And then we had, they had my younger brother, Antonio. And then we got, assignments to Yokota Air Base, Japan. So that's mainland Japan for those that don't know. After going to Yokota Air Base, Japan, my father, he had some relationship issues with my mother. At that point in time, they kind of had a rocky start. They ended up getting divorced. At that point in time, my dad sent my brother and myself home with my mom. She also had an older son, my older brother, David. So I'm the second oldest of all my siblings. And we'll get to that later on. But as we go home, she's originally from Duluth, Minnesota. So we go up there. At this point in time, I'm only like 3-4 years old, and my brother's about 2 years old himself. At this point in time, we're living with her, and I can't really remember a whole lot from back then. But what I do remember is, my father coming home one time, and he told me the story later on in life, and it's just, it's kind of heartbreaking when he's talking about it. He told me that he walked in. He couldn't find my mom. She struggled with addiction of alcohol and drugs. He couldn't get a hold of her. He couldn't find her at the house that she said she was living at. So what he did was he went to my grandparents' house from my mom's side. asked them where I was, and they kind of told her like, hey, where she was normally seen frequenting. And then what happened was he actually went to that house or apartment, wherever it was, and he found me and my two brothers. We were abandoned for, what he can probably only tell was like for a few days. And he said it was one of the toughest things he ever seen because we were just soiled in our own, feces and urine and everything. We were starving. There was a whole bunch of, just dishes. The whole apartment or where we were at was pretty dirty, and she was nowhere to be found. And I can tell you right now, like, I don't even know if I would be here if it wasn't for him trying to surprise his two sons on that day, coming all the way from Yokota Air Base, Japan, from overseas. So certain things like that, kind of made me think and go, just kind of look back on my life and like, man, that's a really, tough thing that still sticks with me today, that is still, rocking my relationship with my mother today. We don't have the best of relations. I honestly don't even talk to her, because of, her willingness to do things like that and not really, get off the drugs or alcohol even to this day. So long story short, my dad spent like his last 20 something, he only had about 20 something dollars inside his bank account after he spent money on tickets and clothes for my brother and I. He took us straight to the Walmart, he said back then, and actually bought his clothes in the store and changed us in the bathroom. And then, fed us and bought tickets. He was a young, what they call buck sergeant back then. So we don't have those anymore in the Air Force, but he didn't have a whole lot to his name. But thankfully, he brought us back to Japan, then single dad, moving on. He gets married. We PCS to Anderson Air Force Base in Guam, another island out there in the Pacific. He gets married to a new wife, and she's cool. I kind of remember when they were dating and everything. I was still a young kid, 4, 5 years old myself, going on to like 6, 7, and 8 years old throughout their marriage. But one thing with kids that age, you can tell a kid that they're doing things and they're going to believe it. We're very impressionable at that age. So, the learning factor in a child, if you teach them something, they're going to think that's right. And the bad thing about that was, whenever my dad was at work or TDY or deployed or anything of that nature, her and her brother who lived with us at that point in time, they decided that, they weren't going to treat us, my brother Tony and I, the same as her two kids, because we're kind of a blended family. So we didn't get to eat, every single morning that my dad was not there, he went to work. We had to get up. I honestly can't remember getting a chance to eat breakfast or lunch, and I had to really stay outside and play outside all day. Or if I was in school, I could eat in school. But, at times when we were home, like throughout the summers and things like that, yeah, they weren't feeding us, and then whenever we would try to eat on our own, like, hey, I'm kind of hungry, I'm a kid, I'm going to try to eat, we would get beaten. So I can remember, being beat with a bamboo broomstick over the head, over the back, and then her and her brother just kind of doing those things, just hitting us and, picking on us and things like that. And now that I look back at it, I'm just like, man, that was really messed up. So for quite some time, we're just over there just getting beat, and I'm thinking I'm doing something wrong, just by trying to get something in my stomach as a kid, I'm thinking that's wrong. So even to this day, some of my coworkers, most of them subordinates, they'll see me and I'll skip lunch or, I'll barely eat anything for breakfast, and they'll be like, man, what is wrong with him? So, I had to kind of, tell them that story. It's like, hey, man, for a few years in my childhood, eating was associated with getting my behind beat, so, it was associated with like that physical abuse from, my mom and her brother. So pretty evil things that someone can do to a kid. And the worst thing that happened was, I thought that they were correct. I thought that, me being hungry was the wrong thing to do. So, eventually that kind of changed me to a kid that just tried to stay outside as much as possible. I would see all the other kids go inside and, be called in by their parents, and I wouldn't be able to do that. But when my dad got home, it's so funny how everything turned around, because it was like, all right, hey, we were treated like we were human. We had some dignity and some worth. Uh, but we didn't know that. We thought that that was just the norm. Um, Luckily, though, that marriage didn't last too long either. When I was about 9 years old, they split up. My dad got out of the military, kind of moved back to our home in Massachusetts. And shortly after that, we all kind of migrated down, my whole dad's side of the family migrated down to Tampa, Florida, where I like to say I was raised, go Bucks. Big shout out right there. Champions. But anyway, we still continue. My dad gets into other relationships. We're in blended families again. And, for me personally, now that I look back on it, hindsight 2020, I can see the change in me from those first two, mother figures that I had in my life. My mom and then my stepmom. I started to lose faith and lose a lot of trust in the women that were in my father's life and things like that, that affected me in a way that I just stayed away from them, and I became very independent. So I took care of myself. I was kind of like in survival mode, kind of taking care of me, my brother a little bit. My father raised us, pretty good. He kept us very on the straight and narrow, as much as he could, being a single father, trying to, find his way in a relationship and things like that. So we got in a long one when I was a teenager, but here comes the same thing. And it's probably brought up on by myself too, and my behaviors and my, kind of skepticism of anyone he had in his life. So what that would, cause me to do was like, kind of reject anything and any help that people would do. So we had some, we had some arguments. We would butt some heads sometimes. And, that kind of led to me, being ostracized a little bit, out of the family. I was kind of like the dark horse, like this guy right here, or this young teenager. He's trying to do his thing, but I was being told that I wasn't going to be anything. I was being told that, hey, you're not going to be successful. You're not even going to graduate high school. But I did. I graduated with a 3.0 grade point average. I know it ain't great, but like for for someone like me, that's not too bad. I played basketball all throughout high school. I never really got into drugs or alcohol while I was in high school. Not really. I never did. And actually, a year after that, my dad had to answer a call in to go work out of state. So I was kind of like in there with her, in the house with his girlfriend at the time, and she didn't really show me a whole lot of support either. So, all throughout my life, like I only had one person, and that dude, just left me hanging a little bit. But he did set me on the right path. Followed in his footsteps. I joined the United States Air Force back in April 2003, and after that, it was game on. So April 2003, got in the Air Force. And one thing that I kind of, turned my adversity into a weapon was getting through all those struggles in my life. It really didn't cause me to have much fear after that. Like I wasn't afraid to go away, to move far away from home. I wasn't afraid to see something new or somebody new, because I knew that it just so happened, if it's a bad situation, I've already been used to it. If it's a better and a good situation, it's a positive for me. So that really, kind of let me, explore with no fear of the unknown, which also led to me having some pretty good assignments. My first assignment being Whiteman Air Force Base, New Mexico. Coming from Tampa to a place like Holloman, I really didn't. I didn't enjoy that. That was kind of a culture shock. Going from a big city, beaches, green palm trees, and everything, into a desert where there's nothing. Very small town, not a whole lot going on there. But luckily, I had a great shop, made some good friends there. But they also kind of took me under their wing and helped mold me and said, "Hey, we should do this." And I got an assignment real quick out of there to Kadena Air Base, Japan, in a special ops unit. That's one of the best assignments I ever had. I've got lifelong friends from that base right there, and just being around such high caliber people. That was kind of the start right there to the rise of young Mike Rod. Then moving on, I got lucky again and got my second assignment, Aviano Air Base in Italy, where I kind of grew into my own as a young NCO, still molded after the discipline and the sternness that my father brought me up, like, hey, be disciplined, or you're going to suffer some consequences. So I was pretty good there. After that, the way they saw me, kind of lead my troops and, the way I was with them and not really, letting them get away with a whole lot of things, they was like, hey, you should probably be a military training instructor. And, just so happens that they needed bodies. It was after that scandal back in 2012. And, I was really thinking about getting out of the career field and stepping into a special duty, from my ALS instructor, who actually told us this is what you should be doing. Shout out to Tech Sergeant Richard Hose at the time. I'm pretty sure he's out there somewhere. If he ever hears this, I still remember his name. Pretty good dude. But I went out there, I became a military training instructor. And, that's another, fearless step into the unknown that a lot of people, typically get intimidated about. And I wasn't really intimidated about it. I was all for it. That doesn't say it was easy, but I was all about going over there, and I had a great time. Stumbled a bit too. It doesn't matter, because just doing the job and that rewarding job as well. It was a pretty good thing and a great opportunity for me to grow as an NCO and expand my skill set and my knowledge and my perspective outside of what I was having just by being in civil engineering in my own career field. So, that's the military side, and that's how that helped me grow. But the reason I say I do weaponize it is because going through all those struggles in my life, that really helped me be able to, have the credibility when I'm telling other members that they can get through their struggles as well. And that kind of really drives me forward as far as, giving me a purpose to continue to, exist in the military, continue to do the things that I do right now, being the Commandant of the Airman Leadership School. I feel like sometimes I'm the counselor, the principal, the life coach, because everybody thinks like, oh, I need to see the Commandant. And, I can usually help them out with things. But it's the fact that I do tell them my story, that they actually believe, hey, this dude went through all of that and I didn't even know about it. And he doesn't really, show that he has gone through any of that stuff. So I use that as a weapon, like, hey, my adversity, the fact that I was able to get through it gives me a whole lot of strength and credibility when I'm actually helping other people. And that's really why I exist, is to help other people get through the things that they're trying to get through in life.
So I appreciate you sharing your story here with us. I really do. And it just goes to show you never really know what somebody's story is. And I think that you and I, we have a lot of mutual friends. You're kind of in this little Avenger circle of people, whether it's from Spangdahlem or because we were both stationed at Spangdahlem at the same time.
Yeah.
And then crazy enough, you come through the enlisted professional military education instructor course, and you had the best instructor there, without a shadow of a doubt.
Hey, no doubt.
He's definitely one of the top 3 instructors there. But yeah, you were in my class, and it just goes to show, because I mean, even like the individuals that were in our class, y'all had a pretty tight knit group.
Oh yeah,
y'all hung back on the weekends. And I remember like one Friday I left my computer. Like I logged off of Teams. I went and did something and I came back later on, and y'all are on here like sipping Zimas and Sprites together. So, but y'all are really close, but I guarantee they didn't know, your story like that as well. So, I mean, you'll probably be hearing from them, but you and I were talking earlier today before we started recording about how you can go down one of two different roads, especially with the hand that was dealt to you. And, I saw something on Instagram not too long ago that said, there's two brothers, they grow up with an alcoholic father. One ends up becoming an alcoholic and the other never touches alcohol in their life. What do you think it was that through all of your adversity got you to where you are today? If you could define it in like one word, what would that be?
Pain. Yeah, that's what I think it was. Just going through it, it really sucks, and I didn't want to have to go through that again. And then to imagine anyone else having to go through that again, that's what I don't want. So I don't care who it is, what time of day it's going to be. Like, I'm going to be there, for that person and share them with my story if it's going to help them get out and of their own sort of pain and suffering. Like, I can't, and I don't use it as a, hey, feel sorry for me. No, I use it as a, hey, I've gone through it and I've made it through, so I'm good. Nothing can hurt me after that, so.
And now that you're, as you mentioned, the Commandant at Airman Leadership School, which for especially our civilian listeners out there, that's a really big deal. That means he basically got selected for that position and has been put in charge of this entire schoolhouse. And, I can't think of many people that are better suited for it than you are. But what does it mean to you now, looking back, seeing where you came from and now where you're at, where y'all have what's the throughput of students y'all typically have?
We typically have about 45 students per class.
Okay.
About 350 a year.
So you have about 350 students a year that you're over that schoolhouse. You are the name of that schoolhouse. Like, you are responsible for it. And what does it mean to you looking back at your journey, seeing where you started from and where you're at now?
Oh man, young senior airman Mike Roderick would have never known he was going to be in charge of a whole airman leadership schoolhouse. Because I was kind of a knucklehead. I like to have a good time, and development, that was not on my radar as far as what I would do. But looking at it now, I think the greatest thing that I feel is just gratitude of having that opportunity and people having that trust in me to actually be able to lead the schoolhouse that creates their own supervisors, man. These supervisors being the backbone of military units and organizations, having that responsibility bestowed upon me, to create their backbones. Like, that's really important. And I'm glad to be a part of a team. I have a great instructor team that actually, shares that level of responsibility and that pride in it. And, we like to make things happen. We like to grow the best supervisors that we possibly can.
That's awesome. Yeah. And before I go to my last question, I got a little surprise for you. I told you I had a little something for you. I don't like to troll y'all at all, but especially the people in your class, they would really appreciate this. But if I'm talking to you, I had to come prepared.
Oh, yeah.
With my little espresso mug here.
Bodie with a little mini mug.
And for our listeners out there, they obviously cannot see that. He would log in virtual and he'd be sipping on a little espresso. And he said that he did it so it just made him look bigger on camera. It made it like he had bigger hands. Because I was like, man, he's got a small. I was like, he was not that big when I was down at Spangdahlem. He's got like acromegaly or something. But
hey, Deception and theatricality. You know, I was using that art right there.
Well, I like how I told the flight I'm like 6'5" because we're virtual, and then you dime me out, and you're like, man, you're like 5'8". Like, appreciate it. So took away the aura of it. But final question for you here. This is a new thing we're starting with Rise from the Shadows.
All right.
Book recommendation for listeners out there.
Book recommendation. Let me see. Let me scroll through because I got a good one, but I want to make sure it's the right one. Just one. I like, shout out to my girl Nina because she got me this book. But The Outward Mindset. And why do I recommend that? Because I think, especially with everything going on in this world right now, I think the root cause is a lot of people are thinking about themselves instead of thinking about everyone else as a whole. And if we start considering our neighbors and having that level of consideration towards, what's going to impact them, I think that book really summarizes it, dives deep into it. And I think, considering the neighbors, how they feel, what we can do to be an asset, to everyone else. If everyone does that, I think we'll be in great shape.
We'll have a link for that in the episode description for this.
Yeah.
Final comments for our listeners out there.
All right. Final comments for the listeners. I really have none, but, I'll just share again, like, the adversity, that people have gone through. If you still come out of it alive, just know that it only makes you a stronger person. You have that much more testimony and credibility when you're helping others. And if we all have that mindset to where we can help others get through, this thing we call life, like Bodie and I, we share, a love for, old movies, right? And one of those movies is Rocky. One of my favorite quotes from Rocky Balboa, the movie, he talks about no one's going to hit as hard as life, but it ain't about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep on going. And, that's kind of what I live my life by. I'm not a glutton for punishment, but, I live my life by the mantra that, things aren't going to take me down or take me out to fight.
This is a good episode. We plug Nina, plug Rocky. We got our little Avengers comment in there. But let me ask you this. Now, spontaneous question now. Best Rocky film?
Rocky IV, no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Rocky
IV. He dies. Yeah. I met Carl Weathers at a Comic-Con.
Oh,
and I went up to him. I met Drago too. And Dolph Lundgren. But yeah, I met Carl Weathers and I went up to him and my daughter was with me and I said, man, I just got to tell you, your death scene was like a dark hole in my childhood.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And I felt like I had to tell him. Yeah. It was just like, it hurt and it still hurts. And I'm, in my 30s, but then, I met Dolph Lundgren. I told him the same thing. I was like, man, you have no idea what you did to you almost scarred me as a kid.
What's funny? Dolph Lundgren is, he's in a lot of action movies, right? So, I think a lot of, people thought he was this big, dumb actor, but this dude's actually really smart. He's got a legit degree, and he's a genius. If you really
I know we're sidebarring, but have you noticed in Rocky, like Rocky's really dumb, like Rocky 1, 2, and I think it's Rocky 3 where he gets really smart.
Mm-hmm.
He has money and he's really smart, and then he's smart up until like Rocky 5, and then he goes back to being dumb again
because that brain damage.
Yeah, he had money. He could speak well and but then he lost his money and he went back to yo, these are real bricks here. All right, well, sir, thank you for joining us here on this episode of Rise from the Shadows. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule, folks. That is going to conclude this episode. See you next time. Hey, Shadows listeners, if you're looking to make some extra income that also impacts people, then you need to look at becoming a certified leadership coach with Giant. If you don't already know, Giant has been in the leadership space for over 13 years. I got certified through Giant in 2018, and I've been teaching ever since. Just to give you some context, they used to own and operate the John Maxwell brands. They ran the LeaderCast conferences where Jim Collins, Henry Cloud, Malcolm Gladwell, and Simon Sinek, just to name a few, were regular speakers. They have over 500 coaches worldwide, working in over 127 countries, and are being hired by companies like Google, Chick-fil-A, Pfizer, Delta, and more. And yes, you can do this too. I know this might sound intimidating, but Giant will literally give you everything you need to start your own coaching business from scratch. You get hands-on training from top-level coaches to learn the exact methodology and tools that six-figure coaches are using. You get an all-in-one online platform to run your entire coaching business, even if you want to work 100% remotely. And you'll get to join a thriving community of coaches from all around the world. To get started, Giant is hosting a coaching business workshop to help you learn the ins and outs of how to build a successful coaching business. This is both for experienced coaches, consultants, and those who are looking to start coaching and consulting with little to no experience. If you want to hear the really good news, this whole workshop, it's free, 100% free. And you can reserve your spot by going to giant.tv/shadows. Why not give it a shot? What's better than making a positive change in people's lives and making some extra money in the process? Giant launches a new hiring cohort every month. Now, they only have 20 coaching slots available each month. So it's first come, first serve. So go ahead and make sure you reserve your spot. If you're ready to make an impact and get paid doing it, go to giant.tv/shadows, giant.tv/shadows.